welcome to Animals Labs. We're back today. We thought we'd do another one of our educational streams. We have a new mic, so please let me know how that sounds in the comments below. I thought we'd look at clanboss. It's everyone's favorite area to gain loads of good rewards. I mean, we'll just look at some of the rewards that you can get. You know, every day when I do the Ultra Nightmare with my clan, you get between a minimum of 2 ancients, upwards of 3 shards. You get legendary books, sacred shards, etc. It's one of those areas of the game where you can really enable your account by doing. So I thought I'd just go through with a more educational focused view of like, what do you need to make a good clanboss team? And there are obviously two different types of clanboss team. You've got unkillable or non-unkillable. For the majority of the people, they're unlikely to have been fortunate enough to get 2 man-eaters. Dreaded curse, I believe. Or we have the killable version, or you build around something like a Valkyrie. So when you're in the clan boss itself, the clan boss has 3 different moves that he makes. The first one is a full-on slam that does damage to everyone, but it doesn't. It's like the lesser of the 2 slams. The second one is a more significant slam, where he puts down his set of debuffs and he does more damage. When he's an affinity boss, he will have a second pair of arms. Those arms obviously are different, tend to be coloured, and they add debuffs. Spirit one adds slow, red one adds decrease accuracy, and blue one adds decrease attack. Obviously the spirit one is the biggest problem, because if you slow down and you have a tuned build, then you're stuck with the problem. The third attack is going to be a single target stun. Now the stun is obviously really hard to tune, but for general rule, it's done on the number of debuffs plus the person with the highest HP and lowest defense combo. Oh, I can't give you a specific mathematical formula for that, because it seems to be more of an artwork for the general population of raid anyway. But you can kind of limit it. So for example, against Void Affinity, one of my targets that tends to get stunned the most here in this team is Brogni, because he's got such high HP, but I kept his defense down. So I thought we'd go through a list of debuffs and buffs that are the best to help against the clan boss. The first and probably the most important 2 buffs against the non-unkillable are defense down and attack down. Okay, so if we go to someone like my all-time favorite champion for this, decrease attack is a 50% decrease attack on the particular individual. If you think the clan, let's assume the clan boss has 1,000 base damage. If you decrease attack on it, you reduce its damage by 50%, which means there's less stress on your defense, there's less stress on your actual HP bars themselves. And when you get to wave 20 and above, the slams, especially the second slam we discussed, starts to do significantly more damage, and this is a way of negating a large portion of that damage. The second debuff obviously is big, is decreased defense. Again, 60% of the clan boss's defense, which means your attacks do almost 200% of the damage they would. Obviously, if you think you're going against 100% damage, you reduce that defense by 50%. You're going to do a significantly more amount of damage. What you want to do is try and pick champion for both roles, either in one separate place, but you need those 2 buffs are almost mandatory for all clan bosses, with the exception of unkillable, where you don't use the decrease attack. So once you have those 2 debuffs down, you've got the basis of your team. You're going to need some other buffs just to keep yourself alive. Defense up is a big one. We've discussed Ultan, and he has the decrease attack, but he's also got increased defense, which means this is increasing your defense by 60%. Some of the other champions that you've seen it on, I believe everyone had access potentially this monster, Rogny. So he has decreased attack as well. So useful for this increased defense on 3 turns. When booked, that you take your defense. Let's assume that it's like 3,000 or 4,000. Probably, I think you want to aim for like 3,500 minimum for Ultra Nightmare, and you bump it up to 5,000 with this increase. That's quite a large change, you know, in the way that you take damage. So it's almost, I would say it's almost compulsory to have that in a non-unkillable version of the clan boss. Right, Iron Brago is a good one. You know, Martyr's a good one. So you're starting to build your team out. Obviously, you've got decreased attack, decreased defense, increased defense. If we have a source of weaken, we're in a bonus place. Now, there are obviously 3 champions that are very well known in this game as increasing your damage massively. Everyone's favorite champion that they look for and you long for is the legend herself. She's probably one of the best champions in the game. And if you really want to stick into like 1 and 2 key territory other than Man Eater, this is the lady to go to, where you place in counter attack, the shield. So the counter attack is the big one. If you have a counter attack on for 2 turns, when you place it on the first slam, you get an additional 5 attacks, and the second slam you get an additional 5 attacks, which, as you can imagine, is a big difference to your damage. The counter attacks obviously don't tend to trigger full damage on them. There's somewhere where they do slightly less damage, but you've got an additional 10 attacks, you know, over the course of a good 20 or 30 turns. If you went in to make the math easy with 7 turns, you do 5 attacks a turn. 21 turns is 105 attacks. When you start adding counter attack, you have to add, and we would add an additional 14 turns of those counter attacks, which means we add another 70. So if you look at it, you're almost doubling, not quite, it's like nearly doubling your damage. When you start, if you have a big unkillable team, or you have like a Valkyrie with the defense up, she can quite happily go to turn 50 or 60, and you start to see, you know, I would have been doing, if we go do the math on 50 or 60 turns, I would have been doing 300 attacks, but suddenly I'm doing like 550 attacks. It's a very big difference in the actual damage you put out. She also has a shield buff on her, where the shield buff's really good in the second slam and against the stun as well, to minimize the damage from that. Obviously, you should all know the other counter attack champions in Marta. Probably my favorite champion in the game. I've been fortunate enough to get her. That she's just built for decreased defense, increased defense, counter attack, and decreased attack. So she's built for clan boss. And then I believe he's an Ogren, right? Skull Crusher, yeah. So this guy, Skull Crusher. These are the big 3 to look out for. Skull Crusher has it again. His is not quite as good because he doesn't place on himself. So there's a potential where you could put 2 of these guys in. And then once you have those up, you need your damage dealer. So a lot of damage dealers can be straight up champions that do full on hit hard. You know, your Septimuses, your Oltans and stuff like that. But if you don't have access to those big beaters, you have 2 options. You either go for a HP burn. Who's this one? So she puts a HP burn champion out. HP burn does 75,000 damage to the clan boss in Ultra Nightmare, which, you know, every turn 75,000 started up. Or she also has poison. When you look for your poison champion, look for a 5% poison champion. A lot of people will have the starting champion Kale. Now, Kale's A3 is really good because it's 40% chance buffs to 50% chance of placing 5%. But he's somewhat problematic because he puts baby poisons on. There's only 10 debuff slots on the clan boss, so you want to be careful of that. And obviously, poison is going to do 50,000 damage to the boss per stack. HP burn you can only have one stack on, so you'll never have like 3 stacks of HP burn. Poison you can, which is why it's generally thought to be the better of the two. Occult Brawl is a good one. He adds poison each turn, 5% plus with 5%. So generally thought as one of the big DPS. If you have a counter attack champion, then one of the best champions you can go for is the Frozen Banshee. She has when they're under points and sensitivity, and what poison sensitivity does is 25 increases the damage by 25%. So you suddenly go from 50,000 to 65,000 damage per poison tick. She can add 2 of them on, and she also brings the poison sensitivity. So if you don't have a counter attack, and we're looking at the two, obviously we say Frozen Banshee, Cold Brawler are the two that you tend to get most often. If you have just Frozen Banshee, you're going to pull out 4 poisons over 3 turns. Cold Brawler can do common about 6 poisons if he maximizes out. It's from a little RNG, he tends to get between 4 and 5. But he can do a maximum of 6 poisons over those 3 turns. Whereas if you have counter attack, Frozen Banshee can do 8 poisons, and she's 100% chance of doing those poisons compared to the Occult Brawler, who is going to be back at. He can do 8 poisons, but I think the math works out he's going to average about 6.5 poisons over those 3 turns of counter attack. So that's why she's considered the premier non-legendary poisoner. If you're fortunate enough to get Draco, cherish him. So those are the main sources of damage. You've got those down. There are a couple of like secondary buffs that you can use to stop yourself from taking the stun, or the debuffs from the clan boss. There's 2 options. You can obviously cleanse them. One of the big cleansers that you see is Doom Priest, and what you do is you just make her so that her passive removes 1 random debuff. You make her the fastest champion, and she removes the debuffs. Or you can go for a block debuffs champion. Getting back in here. So places block debuffs. So you don't take any of the effects. Now this block debuffs is also good in unkillable. Again, if you take that slow in your unkillable team, you're kind of in trouble. So some of the big ones that you see, they're like unkillable comp, but they need Doom Priest. Or if like you're fortunate enough to have double mana, so they come with it on their ability there. So that will allow you to cycle through them. Obviously, with unkillable comps, you don't require the deep attack down. Obviously, not massively an issue. You also don't require the defense up buff. However, a lot of the champions that you still want in clan boss benefit from that increased defense. You know, you can put Razin in an unkillable comp, and he still benefits from his increased defense. His damage is based off defense, and therefore increasing his damage is defense is gonna increase his actual damage to the clan boss. I'm gonna give you an example of the 2 teams that I use. I have different teams for clan boss. So this here is my Ultra Nightmare team. It's a double man eater unkillable type team. Obviously, the 2 man eaters, you have the various unkillable comps that you could go for, and I would head out to Devil Jedi's site. He's got the best list of unkillables. I've got my counter attack champion to increase my damage. She comes with, as I say, everything you need. Increased defense. The decrease attack that goes out is somewhat annoying, but I've got the other man-eaters tend to do it as well. You want to try and keep their accuracy low so they don't hit as often, but there's still a small chance. Razin brings in the decreased defense and weaken to maximize the damage, and then because I have counter attack, poison sensitivity, and the poison buffs on. While we're in here, we'll have a quick look at a non-unkillable version of the team. This is Carbis. He's a member of DW1, Juices Wild. And he's gone for a full non-unkillable team. He's managed to get Valkyrie herself. So he's got shields and counter attack from Valkyrie. He's got decreased defense and weaken and poison from Draco. He's got attack down and decreased defense and speed up, so he increases his speed from Krisk. He's got block debuffs, as we said, attack down, increased defense from the Polka. So she's just keeping the whole team alive, preventing them from taking their debuffs. And then Valkyrie, Sandlashed is just an extender. So whenever most of these people have their debuffs on a 2-turn cooldown, he's a 3-turn cooldown with a 2-turn duration. He just makes it so it's a 3-3, so that they're always up. When I do Nightmare, my team changes up very slightly. So my unkillable team is not tuned for Nightmare. So what I tend to do is just throw in these two other champions. So again, change this up slightly. There's the debuff target. We have counter attack and increased defense and decrease attack off of Marta. We have defense down and weaken off of Razin. We have poison sensitivity and poison off of Frozen Banshee, and we have poison sensitivity and poison off of Nama. Nama also has a decreased attack. We have shields plus block debuffs from Grogny, and he brings a source of HP burn. So this is covering all of the basics that we need to make our clan boss team smoothly. One thing you need to know is sometimes your champions have particular cooldowns where they're not always in line, so you can tune the teams and talk to the people in your clan, or in those of you who are in my clan, come and mention me in Discord, where we could right now set it up. Team is not quite speaking properly at the moment, but you could set it up so this turn I could use my shields and my block debuffs for 2 turns, but because I don't have an extender, that means that that buff is not going to be up when we need it most. Let's put the decrease attack on. So you see we've got defense down, weaken, poison sensitivity thing, and we'll just let this go. If you have any questions, please reach out in the comments. I ask that you like and subscribe, and until next time, have a good day.